Quote, although the experience is special, it does not happen to a special person. It happens to any of us when the conditions of letting go and opening the heart are present, when we can sense the world in a radically new way. End quote. Hey there, everyone. This is Jonathan again, bringing you episode 2 of The Equation. And the intro quote is from Jack Kornfield, who has made it his life's work studying spirituality with an emphasis on Buddhist practices. And he emphasizes an important point, that a spiritual awakening is a special experience that can happen to anyone if the conditions are right. That anyone has the ability to experience this most profound sensation, and it's this profoundly sensational experience that happened to me that I'd like to share with you. So, a spiritual awakening. I have to admit that part of overcoming my various fears is getting used to the idea of me being a person who has had a quote-unquote spiritual awakening. You're talking about someone who right up to the point of the spiritual awakening was a vehement atheist that thought any spiritual business was a bunch of woo-woo escapist crap. The term has always sounded very corny and new agey to me, but as the saying goes, if the shoe fits, wear it. My brother has experienced a very similar yet totally different phenomenon that he refers to as his, quote, HLS, quote, experience, as in high-level shit. So that's a fun one and a little easier for me to digest, so I will probably use them interchangeably. Back in 2003, man, it seems crazy to introduce 2003 with back in, but alas, here we are in 2017 already. I was 25 years old and had found a really good groove in my life. As mentioned earlier, I was, and still am, a freedom freak, and at the vital age of 25, I felt like I was really onto something. During the summer months, I worked as a seasonal bat biologist traveling across the Midwest in search for the endangered Indiana bat. That's Myotis sodalis for all my biologists out there. And in the winter months, I had landed a gig with the United States Lewis Association as their academic advisor for the junior national team. It's a mouthful. Duties for such a bizarre position included, but were not limited to, conducting study halls for the athletes and help them with their various work to the best of my ability, maintain good dialogue between the student athletes, parents, and teachers, freeze my butt off at various tracks throughout North America and Europe while attempting to video, quote, the sliders as they're referred to, as they came screaming past me at speeds of up to 90+ miles an hour. And lastly, provide a worthy sparring partner for the Russian-born assistant coach in the sport of ping pong. It may come to a surprise to the listener, and to the assistant coach for other reasons, that the most challenging part of the job was filling the damn torpedoes rocketing past me while I tried to follow them with a camera that I was cradling with oven mitt-sized gloves. The teaching came easy to me, and I really enjoyed the opportunity of trying to help out the students in all the varying topics. So between getting to travel to work as a field biologist during the summer and traveling with the luge team during the winter, with ample time off in between to, well, travel, for freedom freaks with a passion to see the world, I felt like I had hit gold. The spring after I worked as the academic advisor, my brother and I took a trip to Belize together. We wanted warmth, hated Florida, even though since then we have both relaxed quite a bit on our shared hatred of the sunshine state, and we were looking for an adventure, but not too much of one considering we were both ignorant in knowing any other of the thousands of languages our beautiful planet nurtures besides good old boring American Midwestern English. So Belize it was. Chuck and I are great traveling partners. We share the same laid-back approach to exploration that values a coffee at a local spot as much as taking a tour of some amazing ruin. We also do very little planning beforehand as we find it hard to conceptualize a place and be able to plan something without actually being there to take in the sights, sounds, smells, etc. of what makes a place a place. So with absolutely no idea what we are getting ourselves into, off we went to sunny Central America. We found ourselves renting a cabin on the sliver of an island called Caye Caulker, spending the first couple of days unwinding with a bucket full of Belgian beer hanging out on a secluded dock on the south end of the island. We had a blast just shooting the breeze and getting a nice buzz in paradise. I noticed that sometimes I found myself pacing when we talked, and apparently it was contagious because Chuck started to follow suit. After hearing about how amazing the Mayan ruin of Tikal was, we decided to head across the border to Guatemala. Mind blown. I had never known too much about Mayan ancient civilization and pretty much surmised that all grand ancient pyramid-type structures were located in Egypt. Dead ignorantly wrong. To experience such an ancient grand architecture in the middle of a deep jungle had me ecstatic. I couldn't get enough of the whole experience. The structures, some completely covered up by the unrelenting jungle, some partially exposed, others fully excavated, while yet others were fully excavated and restored. All this while having spider monkeys swinging above me discarding eaten fruit as they make their way to some unknown destination, a cacophony of exotic birds singing and swooping all over the park, and lastly, hearing howler monkeys call out with their terrifying roar that can carry up to 2 miles in the jungle. A sense of wonder was ignited in me that I have never experienced up to that point in my life. I left that magical place with my backpack loaded down with books and buzzing from awe. We left by means of hitchhiking with this joyful, generous Guatemalan family that only served as the icing on an amazing experiential cake. After Tikal, our fly-by-the-seat-of-your-pants travel philosophy finally caught up with us. It was Easter and everyone, and I mean everyone, okay, I'm sure not everyone, from Belize goes on holiday. So Chuck and I found ourselves struggling to find accommodations and a destination that we would enjoy hanging out in for the last part of our trip. We eventually hitchhiked in the back of a dump truck that was heading south, past Hopkins, our haphazard destination. But before we could head south, we had to go around Dangriga to various businesses to pick up and drop off supplies, as the truck was rented by a handful of different guys who needed to make a run into the city for goods. So here was Chuck and I unloading and loading Coke bottles and picking up cinder blocks in exchange for a southbound lift in the back of a Belizean dump truck. It was a blast. Upon arriving in Hopkins, we came across more of the same crowded, non-vacant conditions. As Chuck was climbing the stairs to a hotel to check on availability of yet another Grimm's Fool's Errands, he muttered, "Well, I may as well go and get turned down again over with." And I responded, "Come on, have a positive attitude." And lo and behold, the proprietor had one more room available, and as a matter of fact, it had a beachfront balcony with hammocks. Now, I would like to take a break in the story to talk about this instance, and the Belize trip in general. I included this last positivity tidbit because it stood out to me as a very significant part of the adventure, and highlights how being positive is a life-affirming attribute. Yet 2 white dudes prevailing over whether or not they find a hotel room on their fancy-schmancy trip to Belize is about as privileged of a story of triumph as they come. Quote, "Oh, the 2 white hetero-male-bodied brothers prevail in finding nice cozy room while the rest of the native Belizean population couldn't even dream of affording it. Fucking puke." In other episodes, I'm going to dive into the subject of privilege and look at its relationship with attitude. I argue that it's vitally important to not suffer no matter where you fall on the ladder of privilege, and having a positive attitude is one of the many complex ingredients in the sweet dish of not suffering. Okay, back to the program. Upon returning from Belize, I was still riding a high from such an amazing trip, and that's when things began to get a little weird. I would go to sleep with something on my mind, and while sleeping, I would have a dream that would pertain to what was bothering me, and I would work out the problem in my sleep and wake up feeling refreshed as if I had just received some kind of therapy session. I was confused by what was happening, but I couldn't deny the results or the sensations I was having, so I just went with the flow to see where it was leading. After waking, I started to pace back and forth in the hallway and writing whatever popped into my head. It was a manic period of one epiphany after another just crashing into my consciousness. I couldn't keep all the excitement and crazy energy contained, and I had to let someone know what the hell was going on. So I asked my brother, who was in bed trying to go to sleep, mind you, to come to the living room as I had to tell him something. So like a complete lunatic, I paced back and forth and rambled on about all the epiphanies I was having. It was too much for him to handle, and the interaction ended awkwardly with him going back up to his room. After some time, I went upstairs to get ready for bed, and he came out of his room and told me that at first he thought I had lost my mind. But then he had realized that I had finally found it. Probably the kindest words anyone has ever uttered to me. Bolstered by the support of my brother, I just kept pacing and writing until on one of those days I wrote the word love, and I collapsed on the ground and wept. A sensation of ecstatic peace and confidence washed over me, and I knew that I had reached whatever crazy pinnacle all this was leading to. I carried this amazing energy with me into the world and was able to connect with people in an extremely profound level, and the conversations I would have would still yet reveal pieces of this weird puzzle that was forming with the writing. Part of this experience included the feeling that everywhere I was right where I was supposed to be, and the sensation was so powerful that I didn't question it. Through the writing and pacing process emerged an equation that I felt like I was supposed to share with the world to help aid in humanity's evolution as a species. That all of the writing was a reflection of this simple equation. The sensation was intoxicating, and after the initial intense explosion of ecstasy, I tried everything in my power not to lose that amazing feeling. But as anyone who has experience with this kind of thing knows, there isn't a more expedient way to lose the bliss than to try to desperately cling to it. So I started my slow descent down the mountain and have been dwelling somewhere in the foothills ever since. It's been a long and confusing road, and it's just been recently that I have been able to experience a consistent feeling of love. So it's the equation that surfaced from my HLS experience that is the focal point of the next episode, and of the entire podcast for that matter. Again, I'd like to thank Scotty for all his help in creating this project, as well as WMMT and Appleshop for use of their recording studio. All of the opinions of this podcast are mine and by no means represent WMMT or Appleshop. Take care.